Good morning and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Who Am I? Now, this morning, it's going to be shorter than usual because I probably won't make it a whole hour because here at 6 o'clock I have to go out and take irrigation. So I wasn't even going to be doing a show at all this morning except for I found that I couldn't stop myself. So here I am. Going to talk about it again for about an hour, and then I'll say goodbye till tomorrow. Who am I? It's always the same conversation. Even though we may illuminate it from all kinds of different angles, we may come at it backwards and forwards, up and down, it's the same conversation. Who am I? Where did I come from? What is my design? How do I function? It's all in reference to source energy. We're talking about the nature of reality itself. Who am I? How does this work? Who am I in all kinds of, from all kinds of angles? Who am I as a human being? That's a good question. But who am I as a being at all? Who am I as a piece of this universe? Whatever it is I'm calling it, whatever category I put it in. Who am I as a powerful creator? Who am I as a being of light? Because I believe that actually we are made of light and we're going at the speed of light. And the objective world that you think is so real, the real physical world, is not real. There's nothing there. Now, the experience you're having is absolutely real. It's like the last line in the end of Harry Potter, The Deathly Hallows. It's not the very last line in the book, but it's there near the end of the book. Harry asks Dumbledore whether any of this is real. They're in King's Cross Station. It's all white. He's kind of in between death and life because of the... that's a long story. And you probably heard it anyway. Everybody's read Harry Potter. But at the end, he says to Dumbledore, he says, is this real or is it just in my head? And Dumbledore says something like, of course it's in your head. But what makes you think that isn't real? So it's kind of like that, you know? The experience we're having is absolutely real, just like the dreams that you have. In a way, those are absolutely real. And in a way, the world around us is absolutely real. There's an experience we're all having, and there's a commonness to it, too. Although there is an incredible individuality to it. People think that the commonness is primary, and in a way it is, but it isn't. It is, but it isn't. I don't know how to tell you. The commonness is important because of this allness that we share. The thing that we share is the fact that we are the whole allness. Every single one of us is. And the only difference between the allness that I am and the allness that you are is just that I'm this little individual and you're that little individual, but the whole rest of it we share. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you that the whole rest of it that we share is way, 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 way bigger than we have been giving it credit for. And the actuality is it's so big that we're not exactly in the same world. I'm air quoting world. At most given times. What do I mean by that? Let's back up a little bit. Let's understand this situation before we start popping off to any discussions or debates about the nature of it. Let's agree on what we can agree on. And then from there, then we launch into talking about anything that anybody wants to talk about. And at some point, I'm going to let people into the forum with me. I'm going to let people into the space, into the room, and have them ask me questions in a respectful manner, respecting the spirit of the room. You know, where we have established an agreement about certain aspects of the unfolding reality around us. The way reality unfolds around us is what we're going to agree on. We're not going to agree on what the reality actually is. Oh, no, it's blue, and it's, oh, lean into the left. No, it's more purple, and it's way lean into the, you know, people can argue the details all the time. And I wouldn't argue details with anybody, because that is non-productive activity. To go into a negative state and argue with anybody about specific details about anything, my goodness, I roll. I'm rolling my eyes. That is so not anything I would ever do. So in this space, we're going to kind of agree on a few basic tenets, concepts, foundational precepts, some mathematical, just an understanding of the world we're looking at. And from that position, from that beginning agreement place, then anybody's allowed to add anything that they want to the conversation. One of the first understandings is this particular conversation has no negative in it whatsoever. None, 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 none. Even though, I mean, I say none, 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 but I can feel the echoes of reflections of, you know, the questions that arise because of negativity, you know, so it's kind of echoes of negativity. As I speak about us striving and reaching for more, reaching for who we really are, so that we can get past some things that in our experience, like the sixth mass extinction on planet Earth, and the fact that we are killing the biosphere with our activity, mostly things like cutting down an ecosystem in order to plant stuff like grass and grow things like cattle, you know, so that we can have more beef. That's one of the things that we do that destroys the ecosystem. But mining for things, that's another big destructive activity that we do. Digging and drilling for fossil fuels. Like, oh my gosh, back in 2009, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. And then our response to it was to pour millions of gallons of this noxious, toxic substance. I'm not sure what it was. Gallons is a liquid poison banned in most European countries, if not all of them, for its toxicity. But what it did is it forced the oil underground, under the surface of the water, so that we couldn't see it anymore, and it wasn't this big, nasty, gummy oil spill on the surface, you know, gumming up the wetlands and whatever it would do at the surface. So much damage. How much more possibly was done under the sea? I imagine that the death, the destruction, the poison. Can you imagine? It'd be like if you're swimming along in the ocean, going to go through that area because you flow that way all the time. And you come through that area in 2009 as all of that crap is going on, and you basically swim into poison. I imagine that all over the place was all kinds of dead, tragic, wonderful creatures. Dolphins, whales, seals, pelicans, cormorants, groupers. It's just awful. It's just awful. And not acceptable, by the way. Not acceptable. I do not accept that, as a matter of fact. That is not a part of a future that I accept as being emotional. I'm not okay with us thinking that that's okay, and let's just go from there. And I'm not actually a believer that the reality is forcing us to do what we do. There's all kinds of reality out there, people, and we are not forced to burn fossil fuels because of our need for higher densities of energy. As a matter of fact, at some point, fossil fuels is not going to be dense enough for the energy desires that we have. And from what I have learned about the universe, if you have a desire, the universe has the wherewithal to grant it to you. Now, the desire that you have, it's general things like freedom, abundance, joy, fun, relationship, accommodation. If you have been born into this world, then the universe has the wherewithal to grant you your 7 needs. Not necessarily anything beyond that. The universe is set up for everybody's needs. And there is a point where everybody's needs coincide. And if your desires were lined up with what your needs are and not wasted in a bunch of superfluous... So what you do is you start with seriously wanting your needs. Have those be primary. And then, after that, and as a matter of fact, the universe will begin to grant you the means to fulfill all of the needs. And then you don't really have to consciously worry about that so much. You can think about the things you want to think about. And as a matter of fact, the universe wants you to think about the things you want to think about because you are the universe thinking about what the universe wants to think about. Each and every one of us is. It's the coolest setup. And we know this and we believe it sometimes and then we forget it and act as though it's not true most of the time. Isn't that funny? Anyway, I think it's important for us to kind of just come to a general place where we generally understand this is generally the setup. And then we all go from there. Instead of, we're kind of at a place where everybody was born and raised into a different superstitious cosmology with some elements of clarity and some elements of truth about it. But especially when you insist on specific details about it and disallow anybody else's ideas about it, then now you're kind of getting into where I would call wrong territory. And I don't like to focus on where we are wrong, although every one of us is wrong about something. And I humbly submit that somewhere in my narrative, somewhere, somehow, I'm getting something wrong. I'm trying to make whatever it is very small and insignificant so that the rightness that I am shines clear and bright, and my wrongness is small, tiny in comparison. In any case, I don't like to focus on where people are wrong because one of my thesis postulations is something on the order of everyone is right. And what I mean by that is, so I was married to a deeply flawed human being at one point who had a great deal of pain that he was bringing forward from his childhood, from his upbringing, from the generational trauma administered by his father, his own father at the other end of a belt, at the buckle end of a belt, after he himself got drunk. In a situation where he lived in a family where his 23-year-old mother had 5 children. His 23-year-old Catholic mother had 5 children and an alcoholic, abusive husband. And what a mess all of that was. And then at some point, Dad left the family. And you know what? At some place, somewhere deep in Dave's heart, he might have realized that he was better for the family somewhere else. But still, he had my deeply flawed husband was wrong about a lot of things, let me tell you. But he knew where he was wrong. I mean, he had a sense of he knew that when he went negative, there was something wrong with that. We all know that. There is something very off that we feel when our personal biology, when our biotechnology, when our electrobiotechnology goes negative. We can feel that sensation in our solar plexus and we don't like it. And the reason that that sensation is there is because we have a broader broadcasting station, basically, that is broadcasting nonstop, 24/7, positive. But anyway, he was deeply flawed, and he knew where he was wrong. What he didn't know was where he was right. And I have come to believe that everyone in some manner is suffering from this syndrome. Mostly because us as a society do not acknowledge that there is a place inside every single individual that is deeply and profoundly right. It is right, and you have a right to stand there and scream, this is really big and good. Now, the problem is, when you are out of alignment and the only thing you've got right is that there is a voice within you still standing there screaming how right you are. But maybe you are acting in a terribly misaligned way, and the wrong that you are is so much bigger than how you were right. It's hard for anybody to see. So what am I saying with all of this? I believe that we are all profoundly right about something within ourselves. There is a self within you that is right. And we need to help each other find where that is, as opposed to screaming so loudly, pointing out all the places where you've got it wrong. Duh! Show me where I've got it right, because that's the one that's hiding from me. You know? He needed to be confirmed in his goodness. He needed someone to identify where his heart, where his actions on the outside were reflecting who he really was on the inside, and his inability to do it consistently was making him very unhappy. He was a very unhappy person, partially. And a glorious, delightful person, on the other hand. So, where was my original large point? Who am I? Who are we? I would like us to come to a general understanding of our general equipment, as well as the general setup, looking out there, that allness that we share, the common ground between us. Because there is we are dreaming this into place, by the way, which would give you an idea of how flexible, how malleable the situation actually is. Now, we have been focusing in a really strong way on the continuum of the material momentum, you might say. You might call it that way. We've been focusing on the material aspects of the layout, if you will, for the last 400 years or so. At one point, the mindset of looking at the spiritual at the same time that you looked at the material was left 400 years ago. There was a moment when the two fields of thought split. And the reason that they did is because there was an institution up until the 1600s, 1500s, I don't know. It's very flexible. Leave it flexible in your mind how you're looking at history. But somewhere in there, Up until that point, we had institutions running our societies, really core institutions that informed us about how to behave, who we were as beings, what the rules were, what the cosmic rules were, how you play the game to win it, and what game were you even playing to win what, It was the church, and we went to them. They told us what reality was, and what the meaning of our lives were. It had to do with spirits and demons and gods, and then God, just one, and then all of his rules and these stuff handed down from whatever, and sin, and whatever it is that they were telling us that was real about the world around us. They had the whole picture. And they were telling us what was real in the physical world, and they claimed that it was concentric spheres radiating out in perfection, starting with planet Earth. There's an Aristotelian ideas about that. And anyway, Galileo, who invented a telescope, was able to peer into the night sky and observe very closely what the moons of Jupiter were doing. And he said, wait a minute, this is not doing what the church said that this ought to do based on how they are defining cosmology and the rest of the physical world. And at some point, and so he goes to jail, and there's go look at your history about that, how the church treated Galileo, and then how they had to apologize to him later. They might have even canonized him later. I don't know what the church did. I haven't followed all of that. But it's interesting. At some point, they had to let go of their supremacy about their knowledge of the physical world. They said, okay, fine. You go look at the physical world. We're still looking at the spiritual world. And the two ideologies split. So that's very interesting. Now we come to a moment in time where actually you have to say, you know what? I absolutely recognize what science is looking at, and how science has defined the physical world based on empirical evidence and scientific studies and observations, and then peer review between. You have to depend on peer review between the disciplines, within the discipline, because nobody else except the other scientists within that discipline can even understand the language that the research is, done in. So science is absolutely, how can you argue with what science is looking at if it is being done correctly? It's just a method of looking at the physical world. Well, what is spirituality? It has to do with your feelings. And I postulate, and it's not my idea, I have just embraced it, added it into my picture, and I fold it into the cake that I have baked and I'm presenting for you as I, bring it back forth, that our physical equipment appears to be this binary system, this system of overview and specific view. My overview coming from my vibrational mind. Now, that's a kind of a might cause a misunderstanding, because both of your minds are vibrational. But one of your minds is your physical mind, the one that is specifically connected to your physical body. That physical mind is vibrational. Your other mind is connected to your source. It is your source mind, and it's actually bigger. It's bigger than just your physical body. It stretches out it literally goes to the whole rest of the universe. And the reason that it does, and we discuss this every day, the reason that it can, if you haven't understood this before, then what I'm trying to do every time I come in here is try to explain it more and more clearly. The reason that you can why your physical mind can believe this from a sensibility point of view. You don't even have to take this one on faith. The reason you can believe that your inner being could be in touch with the rest of the universe is because the whole universe is right here with you. You don't have to go anywhere because all the information of all of the universe is holographically and fractally represented and reflected in the field around you everywhere. And when you learn that, when you learn what it is, and then who you are as a consciousness, and how to go about the business of figuring out how to optimally use the machinery you have been, what's the word? Issued? It's the wrong word, because that implies somebody else handed it to you, when actually what you have done, if you knew who you were, is you have come into this body, you have come into this form because that's what you wanted to do. You've been doing this for a long time. You've got a momentum of it going on. There's a familiarity, but you did it to yourself. Nobody did it to you. You are your own overview, even. These two beings, the source mind and your little you mind, they are both you. You can own both of them. And it goes to the name of this show, Who Am I? And the answer is the interesting part. You go, I am, fill in the blank. And depending on how you filled that blank in, makes all the difference in the world. It sets the program for the game. You know, you're on a grid. You've been issued an avatar. There are rules on the ground. You have desires in your heart. You're working, you're co-creating with the rest of the field. What's the object of the exercise? Some people think it's stuff like to control the world. That's the winner. No, or he who dies with the most toys wins. Or stuff like that. But maybe it's he who figures out how to cooperate with the most beings in order for all of us to thrive in an amazing, fun way. Because actually every single one of us is another one of me. And if I would identify it that way, I am everything, then all of a sudden I feel very personally about scars and poisonings and slashings and burnings and death and destruction upon planet Gaia. You know, I start feeling very personally about it. Now, when you take it in a small way and start feeling when you feel small, and then you realize that the rest of the earth is part of you, and you start really hurting because of things happening on this planet. What I did for decades was I just retracted all my feelings. I couldn't hardly stand it. I couldn't bear it when I felt if you know me, if you happen to personally know me, you know that my triggers are things like dogs, the plight of dogs in Korea, drowning polar bears, and orphan elephants, things like that. And I can't talk about it farther than, about 10 seconds before it starts taking me apart at the seams. I have to be really careful about things like that. But the fact is if I really want to have a true positive influence on things like that, I can use them to destroy myself from the inside by... It was probably a good thing that I spent my days crying my eyes out for such things, but I don't like to feel bad, and I can't stay there. I cannot stay there in that place. I had the worst day of my life, perhaps, emotionally, thinking about dogs in Korea. But the fact is that you cannot impose a solution to what you perceive as anyone else's problems from the outside. You can't impose it. Everyone is choosing my desire to live in a world where we all get along, where we all co-creatively cooperate in a universe of freedom and abundance, should not interfere with your ability or your desire to live in a world of darkness. Because if you want to see just how bad it can get when you disconnect from source, you're allowed to do that. Also, I have come to believe in the multiverse, that all versions exist. And my desire to live in a world of peace shouldn't impinge upon your ability to live in a world of war. Because we actually don't live in the same world. There are many, 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 many universes. And our histories are different. You know, your history can be all warlike and your future can be all warlike, and mine can be different. I can decide that the one I want to go enter is the one where we all figure it out, and it gets so cool because then, you know, we consciously tap into all of our human potential, and we quit worrying so much about, you know, the physical reality we have on the ground at any given moment, because we realize how plastic it is, that it's actually quite dreamlike, and we can very quickly dream it into something different if we would learn to handle our states of being, which are actually the switches, the mechanisms by which we shift from different universes. It's the gear shift, if you will. And our four gears, this is the perfect place to shift for the first time my slides to this one. If you're a fan of the show, you know you're a fan of my slides, right? So here's my first slide. These are your four gears. Think of them as the four gears of your starship and how it gauges which universe it's shifting into. The positive ones and the negative ones and everything in between. And all the things that you can imagine, you can just go there and do it, because it's way more imaginal than you're realizing. Now, there is a momentum on the ground of this collective dream that we're having. We are having a collective dream, and everybody's psychosis is playing into the field. And so just because you change your whatever overnight doesn't mean that everything collectively changes overnight. Now, your relationship to it can start changing overnight, but the rest of the group and how they are dreaming is going to have a momentum that will play out, and that's okay. It's actually the way you'd like it, because otherwise you don't have the feeling of reality. You don't have the feeling of continuity if you don't have momentums that play out. You know, your personal dreams are the ones that, you know, in your personal dreams at night, you can shift the moment at any given time based on what you're thinking about and how you're feeling and focusing. You can go wherever you want to in a dream. I should really learn how to lucid dream. That should be a really high level focus for me, because it sounds like it would give a lot of credibility to my program here, and maybe we could start talking to the audience about, you know, their experiences of lucid dreaming, or, you know, whatever. That could be an interesting facet I could add to the mix. But in your personal dreams, there's no real momentum shared by a whole bunch of other physical beings at play, and you're the only one calling the shots, and so you can change the scenes way quicker. But we all could change it a lot quicker if we recognized our collective nature, our dreaming nature, our individual, our divinely autonomous individual nature, our slice of the individuation of the fractal hologram that we have. It's like we own a mirror to it, and depending on how you set that mirror, you can reflect the whole thing back to you, because you have all of the information is coming in across all of your protons. All of your atomic structure contains an encoded set of information that's telling you something about all of the rest of the protons in all of the rest of the universe, not just it's where they are, their temperature, their vector, direction, their velocity, but it's more than that because it's all one thing. And so what is also known is the desire of everything. And what the desire of everything is that we all get along. There is an allness desire where the allness desires that we find that point that where all of our needs vector intersect. And then from there, when all of our needs are met, then launch into desire. And as long as desire does not cross someone else's need for to fulfill their needs, we should be less quick to slash and burn the ecosystem of our fellow creatures to throw up a housing development of our own, because that's the way we do it, and that's the only way we know how, and that's the way we've always done it, and blah, blah, blah. We should be thinking in terms of how could I design my house so that it fits into the ecosystem around me, so the rabbits and the raccoons and even the coyotes and the mountain lions, even, all of them can continue to exist. And I also achieve other desires, like that my children be safe, or that I be comfortable, that I not be covered with ants, or live in dusty discomfort. I want it all. How does that work? And if you put your mind and your imagination upon such things, if that was an intention of yours, we could find it. And we could craft the most gloriously beautiful, amazing, fantastic, interactive, abundant grid ecosystem upon this planet if we understood who am I, and how does this work? So these are your 4 gears, basically. If you're moving positive, it means you're moving forward in an expansive, evolutionary, with the flow of all of the rest of all things, and you're feeling pretty good because it feels good to flow that direction. If you are in any kind of a negative state, you are essentially swimming upstream. You're flowing against the current. That discord is what feels bad to you. Let go, let go, let go. Quit gripping so hard on the specific materiality of the physicality around you, because it's not as real as you imagine. The primary reality to it is actually the vibrational spirit underlying it. And so if you are focusing on the matter and your spirit feels negative, you got it wrong. You let go of the materiality. Do not let go of your spirit. Do not sacrifice your spirit for materiality. The materiality isn't as real as you think it is. Your spirit is what's real. That's all I have to say. Well, that certainly isn't all I have to say. I can only say maybe another 15 minutes worth. And then I'm going to post this as a short. I don't do shorts. I come in and I do my full meditation, my full oral meditation, as I talk about and wander through these concepts that I have agreed upon amongst myself, that these things that I talk to you about are true. I believe these things are true to some, if you're taking an angle on it where it feels a little discordant, then, don't believe what I say just because I say it. Find where it agrees with you. I would advise no one ever, ever, ever to believe anything that does not make sense to them. Don't believe things that don't make sense to you. Keep working on it until it makes sense. And as soon as it makes sense, then believe it. But I also believe in having an open mind, which means you better be putting every single thing that you ever come across somewhere. I don't know what to do with that, but I got an open mind, so it's going in there somewhere. And maybe, it shakes out in a way different than you think. Oh, that was a magician. Or, oh, the universe is actually magical. The universe seems magical. It isn't really magical. When you add it all up, it makes so much sense. You will be astounded at the sense. The whole thing makes sense. I'm reminded of my analogy of the blind men and the elephant. It's an old story. All the different blind men are standing at different points at the elephant, who's so big they can't quite tell that there's more of it. One is standing at the ear and says, an elephant is just like a sail. Another one is at the tail saying, no, it's just like a rope. Another one is standing over by one of the feet saying, no, it's just like a tree trunk. No, it's just like a wall. That's someone at its side. And it all depends on how they're doing this, is whether this is right or whether this is wrong. If they're arguing about it, thinking that they're the only one right and everyone else is wrong about what they're saying, then they're wrong. But if they recognize that everyone is right about some aspect of it, and yet everyone also doesn't have the whole picture, and so everyone has a missing place, and you could call that wrong if you want to, And then what is the person's tendency to go negative? Because that is a wrongness. Because it is demonstrating in this moment of your negativity, and I don't care what you're looking at, and I don't care how real you think it is. In your negativity, as you evaluate it in the wholeness. Now, if you're just looking at it from that smallness and you say, I don't like this, well, I'm going to agree with you on that one. You do not have to like what you do not like. And I wouldn't disagree with, you saying this thing you're pointing at, I do not like it. I'll go along with you. However, if you use that negative state of mind to do any kind of evaluation about the overall meaning of anything, then I'm going to disagree with you, because it turns out I have heard this teaching and I actually believe energetically this is possibly true. In a way, the universe doesn't have any meaning. And it is our job as beings to assign it meaning. And so that meaning is coming from me. And what meaning do I assign to it? And it's for me to define who am I. And who I have decided is I am the formless, the liquid love that connects us all together, that place where we all are. That's who I am. And that material aspect of me that has a job. I'm not saying that the living a material life is anything less than the spirit person that you really are. It's actually your job. You can't withdraw. You have to go out into the physical world, onto the board, onto the grid, and do your thing. Stake your flag, make your claim, live your life. You have a physical body you've got to take care of. You may have physical children you have to take care of. You may have other beings that depend on you for one of their or more of their physical needs that we all need to have satisfied to be getting on with this. You may be doing all of that too. But primarily you are a physical being, a spiritual being, of light. You are consciousness. You are... Actually, let me back up. I made a run at something, and I'm not really sure where I got with this. I don't want to be too esoteric, because I am still talking from the perspective, from the point of view of a being ensconced in a human body. Living a human life, living a sacred human life on this sacred planet of co-creative abundance. We actually do live in an abundant universe. As someone that I think has wisdom has pointed out. Several people, actually the first person I ever heard say this expression was Ram Dass. And he was laughing about it. When he said it, it almost sounded like he had just put those two words together. An abundance of lack. The idea of we are abundant. We couldn't stop being abundant if we wanted to, but we have figured out how to create an abundance of lack, which makes it appear as though we were not abundant. But we are abundant. And if we would just shift that consciousness from that scarcity consciousness to abundance consciousness, and we'll talk through the days and weeks and months ahead. I'm with you for life. I think I've decided this is going to be kind of a journal of my mind. As I pointed out to my sister last couple weeks ago, whenever that was, how long ago was it? 10 days ago, 11 days ago, that I am, this whole project, Who Am I, is just a documentation of my own descent into madness, you know? I think what it is an exercise for me as I strengthen the neural pathways that understand these concepts, that connect these concepts that I've decided were true, but I didn't have enough brain connection in my own mind to sustain any thought about it. So it just kind of, I would think the thought, yeah, we are one, and then it would just I had nothing else to say. And then now I'm back in my physical world doing my physical, whatever it is I usually do, without being able to add all that in. So I think that's what I'm doing. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing this morning. It certainly is an abbreviated show. I'm going to have to get outside and do my irrigation here, which I'm very blessedly grateful for. My trees, they drink in the blessings from the river. I live in an agricultural area, and I recently, within the last 2 years, I've planted 14 new fruit trees, and they need the water, and I'm very excited about getting it to them. What else to say about Who Am I? Hold on a moment. I think what I'm going to do for the rest of for just a few more minutes, and then I'm going to sign off. Instead of allowing myself to go off onto some sort of inspired tangent, which I love to do that, I don't have time to do that. So what I'm just going to do in this very, very abbreviated episode, I'm just going to go really quickly through all of my slides. Here, The Origin of Mass, The Nature of Gravity, that is the paper that I'm always referring to as we think about how reality actually comes into being across the singularity, the event horizon of the 0-point energy field, and how everything is connected to everything, how it's all holographic, how it's all spinning, what gravity is. Whoop. There's the diagram of the brain. This is a stupid way to do this. I'm not going to do it this way. This is really stupid. This means nothing to do it this way. All right. Okay, never mind. I gotta go irrigate. So if you were with me this morning, I love you. I'm glad that you were here. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with some more inspired information about who we are and where we're going and what's the meaning of our lives. And I would like us to sort of agree on this general, just really, really general stuff. I'm not insisting on us agreeing on much of anything, but there's some general stuff. If we would agree on that and then everybody go from there, we could line this up so quickly and turn this ship around. We really have a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous future ahead of us. And we just need to focus on the fabulous future we got ahead of us, not the dark shadow getting ready to pounce on us in this moment because, yow. All right. So until tomorrow, when I will come back and attempt again to be a ray of sunshine in all of our lives, I love you all. I bid you peace, and may the source be with you.